The Vorthak High Command had been very clear about Kepler 442b. No intelligent life, no advanced civilizations, no threats. The planet showed promising mineral deposits and 3 suitable moons for mining operations. It was supposed to be another routine expansion, another world to add to their growing empire. Admiral Zexthor studied the holographic display floating above his command deck. The blue-green world rotated slowly, its surface marked with the standard survey readings. Oxygen-rich atmosphere, abundant water, suitable gravity. Perfect for their terraforming operations. His fleet of 12 dreadnoughts hung in space like metal predators, each one capable of reducing a planet to ash. "Begin the descent protocol," Zexthor commanded, his 4 arms working the control interfaces with practiced ease. "Standard formation. Establish orbital superiority and begin surface mapping." The bridge hummed with activity as his crew prepared for what should have been a simple occupation. The Vorthak had done this hundreds of times across dozens of star systems. They arrived, they conquered, they harvested. It was the natural order of things. But as the first wave of scouts entered the atmosphere, something went wrong. "Admiral," Communications Officer Thekaniel's voice carried an unusual tremor. "We're receiving unexpected signals." Zexthor's primary eyes focused on his subordinate, while his secondary pair continued monitoring the tactical display. "Elaborate." "Sir, there are structures on the surface. Large ones. They weren't visible from our initial scans." The holo display flickered and updated. Where before there had been empty continents and natural formations, now strange geometric patterns appeared. Cities, roads, clear signs of civilization. "Impossible," Zexthor growled. "Our deep space reconnaissance showed no signs of advanced life. Recalibrate the sensors." "Already done, sir. Multiple times." Thekaniel's voice grew smaller. "Admiral, these structures, they're not just present. They're active. We're detecting massive energy signatures from multiple points across the planet." Before Zexthor could respond, his tactical officer's alarm system shrieked to life. "Admiral, we have incoming." The main display shifted to show space around their fleet. At first there was nothing. Then, like ghosts materializing from the void, ships began to appear. Not emerged from hyperspace or dropped from faster-than-light travel. They simply appeared, as if they had been there all along, hidden. These weren't primitive vessels. They were sleek, angular craft that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Their hulls appeared to be made of some dark material that made them nearly invisible against the star field. Most disturbing of all, they had appeared inside the Vorthak formation, scattered among the dreadnoughts like wolves among sheep. "How many?" Zexthor demanded, his combat instincts taking over. "Counting. 17. No, 23. "Admiral, they keep appearing. I can't get an accurate count because my sensors keep losing them." Zexthor had commanded fleets for over 30 standard years. He had faced the crystal warriors of Antares, survived the plasma storms of the Helix Nebula, and conquered the hive minds of Proxima. But he had never encountered ships that could simply vanish from his sensors while remaining visible to the naked eye. "Weapon status," he barked. "All batteries charged and ready, sir." "Then why haven't they fired?" The question came from his second-in-command, Captain Veltar. It was a good question. The mysterious ships were clearly in attack positions, but no weapons fire had been exchanged. As if responding to his query, a voice filled the bridge. It spoke in perfect Vorthak, despite the fact that first contact protocols hadn't been established. "Vorthak Fleet, this is Commander Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force. You are trespassing in protected space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." The bridge fell silent. Zexthor's translator couldn't have worked that quickly, and besides, the voice had spoken in their native tongue with perfect grammar and inflection. "How do they know our language?" Veltar whispered. Zexthor ignored the question and opened a communication channel. "Unknown vessels, I am Admiral Zexthor of the Vorthak Empire. This system has been claimed under Imperial Expansion Protocol 7 Alpha. Withdraw or be destroyed." There was a pause before the response came. Admiral, you might want to check your star charts again. This system has been under Earth protection for the past 50 of your standard years. We've been waiting for you. The words hit the bridge crew like a physical blow. Waiting for them. How could these beings have known they were coming? Tactical, I want a full analysis of those ships, immediately. Sir, our sensors are having difficulty maintaining locks. The vessels seem to phase in and out of our detection range. What we can determine is that they're smaller than our dreadnoughts, but appear to have significantly advanced technology. Zexthor studied the display. The enemy ships moved with an almost casual grace around his fleet, as if his massive dreadnoughts were no threat at all. Their positioning was perfect, each one covering multiple angles of attack while maintaining clear escape routes. Sir, his communications officer interrupted, we're receiving a data packet from the enemy fleet. Don't open it. It could be a virus. Sir, it's already downloaded. Our firewalls couldn't stop it. It just arrived in our systems. The main display filled with images and data. Star charts showing the Vorthak expansion routes. Detailed intelligence reports on their fleet compositions, their weapon capabilities, their tactical preferences. Most shocking of all were recordings of their previous conquests, battles that should have been classified at the highest levels. At the bottom of the data dump was a simple message. We know who you are, we know what you do, and we've been preparing. Zexthor felt something he hadn't experienced in decades: uncertainty. These weren't the primitive beings his scouts had expected to find. These were predators who had been watching, learning, and planning. Admiral, his sensor officer's voice cracked slightly. You need to see this. I'm detecting energy signatures from the planet's surface. Massive installations are powering up. The entire planet appears to be weaponized. The implications hit him all at once. This wasn't a first contact scenario. This was a trap. And somehow these humans had known exactly when the Vorthak would arrive. The truth began to unfold through fragments of intercepted communications and data streams that somehow penetrated the Vorthak's most secure networks. Admiral Zexthor watched in growing horror as the pieces came together on his command display. 50 years ago, a single human vessel had somehow tracked one of their deep space reconnaissance drones. Not destroyed it, not captured it, but followed it home through hyperspace using technology that shouldn't have existed. The drone had mapped 17 different Vorthak expansion routes, including the one that led to Kepler 442b. Show me the reconnaissance data from that period, Zexthor commanded. His intelligence officer's claws clicked nervously against his console. Sir, there's no record of any compromise. Our drones reported successful completion of all missions. Then how do they have our expansion charts? The Admiral's voice carried a dangerous edge. The answer came from an unexpected source. The human fleet transmitted another data packet, this one containing surveillance footage from inside a Vorthak facility. The recording showed their own technicians working on returned reconnaissance drones, completely unaware that microscopic human devices had attached themselves to the hulls. The humans called them shadows, devices so small and sophisticated that they were undetectable by Vorthak technology. They had been gathering intelligence for decades, riding along on every scout mission, mapping every conquered world, recording every tactical maneuver. Commander Sarah Chen's voice filled the bridge again, this time carrying an almost conversational tone. We know you're reviewing the intelligence data, Admiral. Impressive technology, wouldn't you agree? Our nano-reconnaissance units have been documenting your Empire's expansion for quite some time. Zexthor's 4 fists clenched simultaneously. You speak of espionage as if it were some accomplishment. We have crushed civilizations far more advanced than yours. Have you? Chen's response came immediately. Let me show you something interesting. The display filled with tactical analyses of previous Vorthak conquests. But these weren't from the Vorthak perspective. They were detailed breakdowns showing the weaknesses in every battle, the predictable patterns, the strategic mistakes that had been masked by overwhelming firepower. The Andromedans hadn't fallen because the Vorthak were superior tacticians. They had fallen because they had fought conventionally against an enemy with superior numbers. The crystal colonies hadn't been outmaneuvered. They had simply been overwhelmed by brute force. Every victory in the Vorthak expansion had followed the same pattern. Locate a world, arrive in overwhelming numbers, crush any resistance through sheer firepower. Your empire succeeds through intimidation and numerical superiority, Chen continued. But you've never faced an enemy that knew you were coming. An enemy that had time to prepare specifically for your tactics. Captain Veltar moved closer to Zexthor's command chair. Sir, this could be psychological warfare, attempting to undermine our confidence before battle. But Zexthor was studying the tactical displays with growing unease. The human ships weren't just positioned defensively. They were herding his fleet into specific formations, using their superior maneuverability to guide the dreadnoughts into patterns that looked suspiciously familiar. Display our standard engagement. Formation, he ordered. The hologram showed the classic Vorthak battle array, dreadnoughts arranged in a sphere formation with overlapping fields of fire, designed to maximize firepower while minimizing vulnerability to flanking attacks. It was a formation that had proven successful across hundreds of battles. It was also exactly the formation his fleet was currently being maneuvered into. They're not trying to avoid our weapons, Veltar realized. They're positioning us exactly where they want us. The revelation was interrupted by proximity alarms. The planet's surface was launching objects into space. Not missiles or fighter craft, but something else entirely. Thousands of small objects that spread out in seemingly random patterns around the Vorthak fleet. Mines? The tactical officer suggested. No, Zexthor said slowly, studying the deployment pattern. Something else. His answer came from the human commander. Admiral, you're now surrounded by our shadow field generators. Each device creates a localized distortion in space-time. Individually, they're harmless. But when activated in sequence, they create something we call a probability cascade. Zexthor had never heard the term before, but his science officer had gone pale. Sir, if they can manipulate probability fields, unexplained. Theoretical physics, sir. If you can alter the probability of quantum events in a specific region, you can affect everything from weapon accuracy to structural integrity. It's been discussed in our research journals, but no one has ever achieved practical application. We have, Chen's voice confirmed. 50 years of preparation tends to accelerate technological development. Would you like a demonstration? Before Zexthor could respond, one of his dreadnoughts suddenly listed to starboard. Not from weapon damage or system failure, but as if the laws of physics had simply decided to work differently around that particular vessel. Engineering reports from the destroyer's Fang, his communications officer announced. They're experiencing what they describe as impossible system failures. Weapons that won't fire, engines that produce thrust in random directions, hull plating that's somehow becoming less dense. The demonstration lasted exactly 30 seconds before the affected dreadnought returned to normal operation. But the message was clear. The humans could have destroyed that ship simply by maintaining the effect. As you can see, Chen continued, we've had considerable time to develop countermeasures specifically designed for your technology and tactics. Your weapons rely on conventional physics. Your shields operate on predictable energy frequencies. Your armor is designed to resist known forms of attack. Zexthor realized the terrible truth. The humans hadn't just been watching. They had been learning, adapting, preparing for this specific encounter. Every piece of Vorthak technology, every tactical doctrine, every strategic approach had been studied and countered. What do you want? He finally asked. For you to leave, immediately, and to carry a message back to your empire. What message? Chen's voice took on a harder edge. Earth remembers every world you've conquered, every civilization you've destroyed, every species you've driven to extinction. We've been documenting it all, Admiral, and we're coming to collect the debt. The implications hit Zexthor like a plasma bolt. This wasn't just a defensive action. The humans were declaring war on the entire Vorthak Empire. But unlike the Empire's previous enemies, they had spent decades preparing for the conflict, studying their enemies' every move, developing weapons and tactics specifically designed to counter Vorthak's superiority. You would challenge an empire that spans 12 star systems. We would liberate 12 star systems, Chen corrected. The question now is whether you're going to make this easy or difficult. Admiral Zexthor made his decision based on 30 years of military experience and the cold calculation that retreat was sometimes the better part of valor. But the humans had other plans. I'm afraid we can't let you leave just yet, Admiral. Commander Chen's voice carried an almost apologetic tone. You see, we have some questions about your recent activities in the Tau Ceti system. The Tau Ceti system. Zexthor's blood ran cold. That had been a classified operation, conducted in absolute secrecy 3 months ago. A small scientific colony that had discovered something they shouldn't have. Something that had required immediate and permanent silencing. I don't know what you're referring to, Zexthor replied, but his voice lacked conviction. The main display filled with footage that made his crew gasp in horror. It showed the orbital bombardment of Tau Ceti Prime from an impossible perspective, from inside the colony itself. The recordings captured everything. The terrified faces of the colonists, the children crying as the sky burned. The desperate final transmissions that had never been meant to reach anyone. Dr. Elena Vasquez, Chen's voice narrated over the footage, xenobiologist studying deep space bacterial cultures. She made an interesting discovery about Vorthak bioweapons. Specifically, she found traces of artificial genetic markers in plague samples from 3 different worlds that your empire claimed were lost to natural disasters. Zexthor's tactical mind raced. The Tau Ceti colony had been eliminated precisely because they had discovered evidence of the Empire's biological warfare programs. Diseases that had wiped out entire populations weren't natural at all, but carefully engineered weapons designed to clear worlds for Vorthak colonization while maintaining plausible deniability. Dr. Vasquez managed to transmit her findings to a research station. On Europa, before your attack, Chen continued. We've had 3 months to verify her discoveries. 3 months to realize that your empire has been committing genocide on an unprecedented scale. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. Even Zexthor's most loyal officers were staring at the display in shock. The Empire's biological warfare program was classified beyond their clearance levels. Most of them had believed the official reports of natural plagues and unfortunate coincidences. The children, whispered Communications Officer Thekniel. They were just children. Silence, Zexthor snapped, but his command lacked its usual authority. No. Chen's voice cut through the bridge like a blade. Don't silence him. Let him speak. Let them all understand what they've been part of. The display shifted to show more footage, not just from Tau Ceti but from dozens of worlds across the Vorthak expansion zone. Children dying in agony from engineered plagues. Families huddling together as their immune systems failed. Entire civilizations collapsing not from military conquest, but from invisible biological weapons that left their worlds empty and ready for colonization. 73 worlds, Chen said quietly. 14 billion sentient beings, all killed by diseases that your empire's scientists created in laboratory conditions. Captain Veltar stepped forward, his voice shaking. Admiral, is this true? Zexthor could have lied. Should have lied. But the evidence was overwhelming, and his crew's faith in the Empire was cracking like ice under pressure. It was deemed necessary for the greater expansion. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Several bridge officers stepped back from their stations, horror replacing loyalty on their faces. The greater expansion, Chen repeated. Tell me, Admiral, do you have children? The question caught Zexthor off guard. That's irrelevant, do you? Yes. The answer came reluctantly. How old? I won't discuss my family with an enemy. Your daughter Kathira is 16 standard years old. She attends the Imperial Academy on Vorthak Prime. She wants to be a xenobiologist like Dr. Vasquez was. The specificity of the information hit Zexthor like a physical blow. His daughter's name, her age, her career aspirations. Information that should have been impossible for outsiders to obtain. How do you know that? Because our shadow devices have been everywhere, Admiral, including your homeworld. We know about your daughter's research project on beneficial bacteria. We know about your son's artwork depicting peaceful contact with alien species. We know about your mate's private journal entries where she questions the ethics of the expansion. The implications were staggering. If the humans had surveillance capabilities that extended to Vorthak Prime itself, then nowhere in the Empire was safe. No communication was secure. No secret was truly hidden. We know that your family represents the better angels of Vorthak nature, Chen continued, just as we know that many of your crew joined the military believing they were protecting their civilization, not enabling genocide. Officer Thekniel spoke up again, his voice barely a whisper. What happens to us now? That depends, Chen replied. We're going to give your admiral a choice. He can return to Vorthak Prime and report that this system is defended by an unknown alien force too powerful to overcome. He can recommend that the Empire find easier targets. And this conversation never happened. And the alternative? Zexthor asked, though he suspected he already knew. The alternative is that we transmit everything we've learned about the biological warfare program to every world in the galaxy. We show them the footage from Tau Ceti, from the plague worlds, from the children dying because your scientists thought genocide was more efficient than honest conquest. The choice was no choice at all. If the truth about the biological weapons program became public knowledge, the Empire would face a galaxy-wide coalition against them. Every species that had ever encountered the Vorthak would realize they had been potential targets for engineered extinction. But there was something else in Chen's offer, something that bothered Zexthor more than the threat of exposure. You're letting us go. For now. Why? You have us at a complete disadvantage. You could destroy this fleet. Chen's response carried a weight that spoke of careful consideration and painful decisions, because destroying your fleet would make you martyrs, dead heroes for the Empire to rally around. But living witnesses who return with tales of impossible human technology, officers who've seen evidence of their government's crimes, that's much more valuable. Zexthor realized the true sophistication of the human strategy. They weren't just fighting a military campaign. They were waging psychological warfare designed to fracture the Empire from within. Returning his fleet would plant seeds of doubt and questioning that would spread through the Vorthak military hierarchy. You're trying to start a civil war. We're trying to start a conversation, Chen corrected, about whether the Vorthak people truly support what their empire has become. About whether officers like Communications Officer Theknil want to serve a government that murders children with designer plagues. Around the bridge, Zexthor could see the effect of Chen's words on his crew. Doubt, horror, and something else, hope. The hope that they might not have to be monsters anymore. How long do we have to decide? He asked. You've already decided, Admiral. The question now is whether you're brave enough to follow through. The journey back to Vorthak Prime should have taken 3 weeks through hyperspace. Instead, it took 5 days. Admiral Zexthor stood in his ready room staring at navigation charts that made no sense. His fleet had traveled through what the humans called shadow lanes, corridors of manipulated space-time that compressed the distance between stars. The technology was so advanced that his science officers couldn't even begin to understand the principles involved, but the implications were clear. If humans could move their forces anywhere in the galaxy in a matter of days, then every Vorthak world was within striking distance. The Empire's greatest advantage, its vast territory that made coordinated attacks impossible, had become meaningless. Admiral, Captain Veltar entered without his usual formal bearing. The revelations of the past week had changed everyone aboard the fleet. The crew is asking questions. What kind of questions? The kind that could be considered treasonous under Imperial law. Zexthor turned from the viewport. His second-in-command looked like he had aged years in a few days. Dark circles surrounded his eyes and his normally pristine uniform showed signs of neglect. Tell me. They want to know if the plague worlds were really our doing. They want to know how many children we've killed with our expansion protocols. Some are talking about requesting transfers to non-combat assignments. These were career military officers, soldiers who had spent their lives serving the Empire without question. The fact that they were now questioning fundamental aspects of their service spoke to the depth of the psychological impact. And what did you tell them? Veltar's silence was answer enough. A chime from the communication system interrupted their conversation. Admiral, to the bridge. We're receiving a transmission from Vorthak Prime. Zexthor and Veltar exchanged glances. They weren't scheduled to report for another 2 days. An early communication suggested that something had gone wrong. On the bridge, the main display showed the familiar sight of Supreme Commander Morthek's command center. The grizzled veteran of a dozen expansion campaigns looked pleased to see them. Admiral Zexthor. Excellent. You're ahead of schedule. I trust the Kepler operation was successful. The question hung in the air like a trap. Standard protocol required a full mission report, but everything about the encounter with the humans had been far from standard. Sir, I need to request a private channel for my report. Morthek's expression shifted slightly. Is there a problem, Admiral? Sir, I strongly recommend a private channel. The Supreme Commander studied Zexthor's face for a long moment, then nodded. Very well. Clear the channel. The background bustle of the command center faded as subordinate officers moved out of audio range. Morthek leaned forward, his four eyes focusing intently on the transmission. Report. Sir, the Kepler system was occupied by an unknown alien force. Human designation. They demonstrated technology significantly advanced beyond our current capabilities and possessed detailed intelligence about our operations. Morthek's expression didn't change, but Zexthor noticed the slight tightening around his eyes. How detailed? They had complete records of our expansion routes, tactical doctrines, and... Zexthor paused, knowing that his next words would change everything. They had evidence of the biological warfare program. The silence stretched for nearly 30 seconds. When Morthek finally spoke, his voice carried a dangerous edge. That program is classified at the highest levels. How could an unknown alien force have obtained such information? Sir, they've been conducting surveillance operations against us for decades. Microscopic devices attached to our reconnaissance drones. They know everything about our expansion, including the Tau Keti operation. Something flickered across Morthek's face. Recognition, perhaps, or concern. The Tau Ceti operation had been ordered at the highest levels of command. A rapid response to eliminate a potential security breach. What did they want? For us to withdraw, and to carry a message that they consider the Empire a threat to galactic peace. I see. Morthek's tone became carefully neutral. And your assessment of their military capabilities? Zexthor chose his words carefully. Superior to ours in every measurable category. They demonstrated the ability to manipulate probability fields, to achieve faster-than-light travel without hyperspace technology, and to maintain surveillance networks that our security forces cannot detect. Recommendations? This was the moment. Zexthor knew that his next words would either help start the conversation that Commander Chen had wanted, or would doom his crew to participation in genocidal campaigns they were beginning to question. Sir, I believe we need to fundamentally reevaluate our expansion policies. These humans appear to have been monitoring our operations for decades, documenting what they consider to be war crimes. If they share this information with other civilizations, war crimes? Morthek's voice carried a sharp edge. Admiral, are you questioning the Empire's methods? Around the bridge, Zexthor's crew had gone silent. Every officer was listening to a conversation that could end with charges of treason for everyone involved. Sir, I'm reporting that an advanced alien civilization considers our biological warfare program to be genocide. They have evidence of engineered plagues used to clear inhabited worlds. They've documented the deaths of civilian populations, including children. Morthek's expression had grown cold. Admiral, you seem to have been influenced by enemy propaganda. The Empire's expansion protocols are necessary for our civilization's survival. The use of biological agents on uncontested worlds is simply an efficient alternative to costly military campaigns. Uncontested? The voice came from Communications Officer Theknil, who stepped forward despite the breaches in protocol. Sir, the worlds we cleared with designer plagues had families, children, civilizations that never had a chance to contest anything. We murdered them in their sleep. Morthek's eyes fixed on the junior officer with predatory intensity. And what would you have us do? Wage conventional wars against every primitive species we encounter? Spend decades and thousands of lives conquering worlds that can be claimed bloodlessly? Bloodlessly? Veltar's voice carried disbelief. Sir, we've killed billions of sentient beings. We've secured the Empire's future, Morthek snapped. And if you've forgotten your duty to that Empire, perhaps you need to be reminded. The threat was clear, but something had fundamentally changed in Zexthor's crew. The evidence they had seen, the questions raised by their encounter with the humans, had shattered their unquestioning loyalty. Sir, Zexthor said quietly, I formally request a review of the biological warfare program by the Imperial Ethics Council. Morthek's laugh was harsh and bitter. The Ethics Council? Admiral, the Ethics Council approved those programs. Every plague, every engineered virus, every dead world was sanctioned at the highest levels of government. The revelation hit the bridge crew like a physical blow. The Ethics Council, the body supposedly responsible for ensuring that the Empire's actions remained within acceptable moral boundaries, had not only known about the genocide but had actively approved it. Then what are we? Theknil whispered. What have we become? Morthek's response was cold and final. We are the Vorthak Empire. We are the dominant force in this galaxy. And if you've forgotten that truth, then perhaps you've outlived your usefulness. The court-martial should have been a formality. Admiral Zexthor, Captain Veltar, and 12 other officers charged with sedition, insubordination, and spreading enemy propaganda. But the humans had been right about one thing. Returning witnesses were more dangerous than dead martyrs. Within hours of their arrival at Vorthak Prime, reports of their encounter began spreading through the military hierarchy. Not official reports, but whispered conversations in mess halls, coded messages between ship crews, and private discussions between officers who had served together for decades. The evidence was too compelling to ignore. Too many details matched classified operations that only high-ranking officers knew about. Too many crew members from different ships told identical stories about human surveillance capabilities and documented war crimes. General Caxthul, one of the Empire's most respected military leaders, requested a private meeting with Zexthor 2 days before the trial. They met in a secure conference room deep within the Imperial military complex, a place where surveillance was theoretically impossible. "Admiral," Caxthul began without preamble, "I need to know if what you've reported is accurate." Zexthor studied the general's face. Caxthul had commanded the Third Fleet during the Andromedan campaign, had personally led the assault that secured the Crystal Colonies. If anyone represented the Empire's military traditions, it was him. "Every word, sir. I've included all sensor logs and recorded transmissions in my official report. The biological warfare evidence. You've seen it yourself. Recordings from Tau Ceti, genetic analyses of plague samples, documentation of civilian casualties from 17 different worlds. The humans have been watching us for decades, General. They know everything." Caxthul was quiet for a long moment, his forearms folded in the traditional posture of deep contemplation. "I've reviewed the classification logs for the biological program. The operation orders came from the Supreme Military Council. All of them. Every plague, every targeted virus, every natural disaster that cleared inhabited worlds for our colonization. It's all documented, Admiral. We've been committing genocide for over 30 years. The admission hung between them like a confession. General Caxthul, decorated hero of the Empire, was acknowledging that their civilization had built its expansion on systematic murder. What do we do with that knowledge, sir? That depends on what you think our duty is. To the Empire as it exists, or to the Empire as it should be? The question went to the heart of the crisis that was spreading through the Vorthak military. Officers who had dedicated their lives to serving their civilization were discovering that their government had transformed them into instruments of genocide without their knowledge. "Sir, if I may speak freely." Caxthul nodded. "The humans offered us a choice. We could continue serving a regime that murders children with designer plagues, or we could work to change that regime. I believe they're counting on us to choose change, even if that choice leads to civil war. General, we're already at war. The question is whether we're fighting for justice or for a government that considers genocide an acceptable administrative tool." Before Caxthul could respond, proximity alarms began sounding throughout the complex. Emergency lighting bathed the corridor in red as automated announcements echoed from hidden speakers. "All personnel to emergency stations. Unknown vessels detected in system perimeter. This is not a drill." The two officers rushed to the nearest tactical center where they found chaos. Display screens showed the impossible. A fleet of dark vessels had appeared throughout the Vorthak home system. Not at the edge, not in approach vectors, but distributed among the orbital platforms, space stations, and defensive installations as if they had always been there. "How many ships?" Caxthul demanded of the duty officer. "We can't get an accurate count, sir. Our sensors detect them intermittently. Current estimate is between 50 and 200 vessels of unknown configuration." Zexthor recognized the tactical signature immediately. "It's them, the humans." "Impossible," the duty officer protested. "Nothing could have penetrated our defensive perimeter without detection. Their ships don't show up on conventional sensors," Zexthor explained. "They use some kind of stealth technology that makes them effectively invisible until they choose to reveal themselves." As if summoned by his words, every screen in the tactical center filled with an image that made the duty officers step back in shock. Commander Sarah Chen sat in what appeared to be a command center, but the background showed the distinctive blue-green curve of Vorthak Prime visible through a viewport. "Good afternoon," Chen said in perfect Vorthak. I apologize for the dramatic entrance, but we felt it was time for a more formal introduction. Supreme Commander Morthek's voice crackled over the communication system from his orbital command station. Unknown vessels, you are in violation of Vorthak's sovereign space. Withdraw immediately or face military response. Chen's response was delivered with the same calm professionalism that Zexthor remembered from their encounter. Supreme Commander, we're here regarding some outstanding legal matters. Specifically, we have warrants for the arrest of government officials responsible for crimes against sentient life. You have no jurisdiction here. Actually, we do. You see, when you signed the Tau Ceti Accords 30 years ago, you agreed to abide by galactic standards regarding the treatment of civilian populations during military operations. The Tau Ceti Accords. Zexthor remembered studying them at the Imperial Academy. A minor diplomatic agreement that had seemed insignificant at the time, dealing with abstract concepts of interstellar law and civilian protections. The Tau Ceti Accords were a symbolic gesture, Morthek replied. They have no enforcement mechanism. They do now, Chen said simply. We represent the Galactic Enforcement Coalition, established under Article 7 of those same accords. We're here to arrest those responsible for the systematic genocide of 14 billion sentient beings. The implications were staggering. The humans hadn't just been monitoring Vorthak activities. They had been building a legal framework, gathering evidence, and assembling a coalition of civilizations to hold the Empire accountable under its own treaty obligations. You cannot arrest the legitimate government of a sovereign empire. We're not here to arrest the Empire's government, Chen clarified. We're here to arrest specific individuals who have committed crimes against sentience. The Vorthak people are welcome to choose new leadership. General Caxthul moved closer to Zexthor. They're offering us a way out. A chance to remove the war criminals from power without destroying the Empire itself. Around the tactical center, officers were exchanging glances, having whispered conversations, making the same calculations. The humans weren't demanding the destruction of their civilization. They were demanding justice for those who had corrupted it. The trial records show who gave the orders, Zexthor said quietly. The Supreme Military Council, the Ethics Committee leadership, the senior administrators who approved the biological warfare program. Maybe 100 individuals out of billions, and in return, we get to keep our civilization, our worlds, our people. We just have to give up the monsters who were leading us toward galactic genocide. The choice was becoming clear to everyone in the room. They could fight a war they couldn't win to protect leaders who had lied to them about the nature of their service. Or they could cooperate with the arrest of war criminals and rebuild their empire on principles that didn't require the murder of children. Sir, the duty officer interrupted, we're receiving surrender requests from multiple fleet commanders. The 3rd Fleet has lowered its shields. The 7th Fleet is requesting permission to stand down. Across the Vorthak military, the same realization was spreading. The choice wasn't between victory and defeat. It was between honor and complicity. 6 months later, Admiral Zexthor stood in the reformed Imperial Senate, wearing the simple uniform of the new Vorthak Republic's peacekeeping force. The ornate military decorations of the old empire had been replaced with a single silver insignia, a stylized representation of 2 hands reaching across space, symbolizing cooperation instead of conquest. The trials had been swift but thorough. Supreme Commander Morthek and 67 other high-ranking officials had been found guilty of crimes against sentient life. The evidence provided by the humans had been overwhelming, documented in such detail that even the most loyal supporters couldn't deny the systematic nature of the genocide. But the humans had surprised everyone with their approach to justice. Instead of execution or imprisonment, the convicted war criminals had been sentenced to spend the remainder of their lives working on the worlds they had devastated, helping to rebuild the civilizations they had destroyed. It was a punishment that many considered worse than death, being forced to face the consequences of their actions, to see the faces of the survivors whose families they had murdered. The reconstruction is proceeding ahead of schedule, reported Dr. Kethirel, the new Minister of Restoration. She was young for such a position, barely past her military academy graduation, but her expertise in xenobiology had made her invaluable in the effort to reverse the biological weapons damage. The humans have shared their medical technology freely, and we've been able to develop treatments for most of the engineered pathogens. Zexthor nodded, though the word most still carried weight. Some of the biological weapons had been too sophisticated, too perfectly tailored to their target's genetic structures. 7 worlds remained uninhabitable, their ecosystem so thoroughly poisoned that even human technology couldn't fully repair the damage. "What about the memorial proposals?" asked General Caxthul, now serving as the Minister of Defense for an organization dedicated to protection rather than expansion. "Construction begins next month," Dr. Ketherall replied. 14 monuments, one for each world affected by the biological warfare program. Each will include the names of every victim we can identify, along with educational centers to ensure that future generations understand what happened. The memorial project had been one of the most important initiatives of the new government. The humans had insisted that true reconciliation required acknowledgement of the past, not just punishment of the guilty. Every Vorthak citizen would have the opportunity to visit these memorials, to understand the full scope of what their empire had done. "Admiral," Dr. Ketherall continued, "we've received another request from the Human Education Initiative. They want to establish a joint academy on Kepler 442b. The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the room. The world where they had encountered humanity's shadows would now become the site of the galaxy's first interspecies military academy, where officers from dozens of civilizations would learn cooperation instead of conquest." "Approved," Zexthor replied. "What about the other requests?" "The Andromedans want to establish a joint research station in the Helix Nebula. The Crystal Colonies have offered to share their defensive technologies. The Centauri Alliance is proposing a mutual defense treaty." Each name represented a civilization that had once been a target of Vorthak expansion, species that had every reason to seek revenge against their former oppressors. Instead, they were offering partnership. The galaxy had chosen reconciliation over retribution, guided by humanity's unexpected approach to justice. "There's one more item," Dr. Ketherall said, her tone becoming more formal. "Commander Chen has requested a private meeting with the senior council." Zexthor felt a familiar mix of respect and wariness. In the 6 months since the humans had revealed themselves, Sarah Chen had become one of the most influential figures in galactic politics. Her coalition had grown from a handful of human ships to a formal alliance of over 40 different civilizations, all united around principles of peaceful coexistence and mutual defense. What does she want to discuss? She wouldn't say, only that it concerns the future of human involvement in galactic affairs. An hour later, Zexthor found himself in the same conference room where he had met with General Caxthul on the day of the intervention. Commander Chen appeared on the holographic display, but this time she wasn't aboard a warship. The background showed what appeared to be a garden, with other humans visible in the distance engaged in peaceful activities. "Admiral," Chen began, "congratulations on the progress of the reconstruction efforts. The speed with which the Vorthak people have embraced change has exceeded our most optimistic projections." "We had good teachers," Zexthor replied. "Your approach to justice has been educational." Chen smiled, a genuinely warm expression that seemed oddly familiar despite their species' differences. "That brings me to why I requested this meeting. The Galactic Enforcement Coalition has served its purpose. The war criminals have been brought to justice, the biological weapons have been neutralized, and new frameworks for peaceful cooperation have been established." "You're disbanding the coalition?" "We're transitioning it, converting military enforcement into civilian cooperation, research exchanges, cultural programs, educational initiatives. The galaxy no longer needs police, it needs teachers, healers, and builders." Zexthor sensed there was more to this announcement. "And humanity's role in this transition?" "That's the complicated part," Chen admitted. "For 50 years, we've been defined by our opposition to your empire. We've built our entire civilization around the goal of stopping Vorthak expansion. Now that we've succeeded, we need to decide what humanity becomes next." The admission was startling. Humanity, the species that had seemed so confident and prepared for every eventuality, was facing an identity crisis now that their primary mission had been completed. "What are your options?" "Some argue that we should become the galaxy's peacekeepers, maintaining the enforcement coalition permanently. Others believe we should return to Earth and focus on our own development. A few extremists want to use our technological advantages to establish human dominance." Zexthor could see the parallels to the Vorthak Empire's own history. Power once gained created its own momentum toward expansion and control. The humans were facing the same temptations that had corrupted his own species. What do you think you should do? Chen was quiet for a long moment, her expression thoughtful. I think we should do what we've always done best. Watch. Learn. Be ready to help when help is needed, but not to impose our solutions on others. The shadows approach. Exactly. Present but not dominant. Helpful but not controlling. We want to establish monitoring stations throughout the galaxy. Not for surveillance this time, but for rapid response to natural disasters, first contact situations, or requests for assistance. Earth's shadows, but benevolent ones. It was an elegant solution, Zexthor realized. Humanity would retain their technological advantages and strategic positions, but would use them for protection rather than control. They would become the galaxy's emergency responders rather than its rulers. You want our permission? We want your partnership, Chen corrected. The new Vorthek Republic has credibility with species that still distrust humanity. Your people understand the dangers of unchecked power better than anyone. We need voices like yours to help ensure that we don't repeat your empire's mistakes. The offer was both generous and wise. By including former enemies in their planning, the humans were creating accountability structures that would prevent them from becoming the next galactic threat. What would this partnership look like? Joint monitoring stations, shared technology development, cultural exchange programs, and most importantly, a formal treaty that limits human intervention to situations where we're specifically requested to help. Zexthor found himself smiling, an expression that had become more common since the Empire's transformation. Commander, I believe you've just proposed the foundation for true galactic peace. Let's hope so, Admiral. The galaxy has seen enough shadows of war. It's time for shadows of peace.